The Ministry of Social Development is on a mission to encourage teenage mothers to return to school ahead of the start of the new academic year. Minister Lindiwe Zulu is doing outreach in Mpumalanga, visiting a local SASSA office there. And that's where the young mothers were applying for the child support grant for their new babies. And Minister Zulu joins us now. Good evening and welcome to you, Minister. How was the experience there seeing these young mothers whose schooling has been disrupted in the welfare line?
Thank you very much, Iman, for the opportunity. And of course, the message that we are sending is not only a message to the teenage mothers, but it is also a message to their parents, it's a message to their communities, it's a message also to the young men, but also the older men who are making these children pregnant. The fact of the matter is that engaging with the communities, one finds that you have children as little as 11, 12, 13 who are now having children. And this is an issue that must not be left only to the responsibility of the girls and boys, but it is a responsibility that must be left to all of us, including other departments of government.
I thought we'd get to, the issue of the really young. I mean, these are children, and in many of these cases, it is safe to say it would be tantamount to rape that ultimately led to them being pregnant. But you brought it up early in the conversation, so let's deal with it now. I mean, this is something we've been talking about for a long time, Minister, with various ministers. It's a problem that seems to be happening every single year in South Africa. What is going to change? There surely needs to be stronger action, stronger cooperation between the authorities, and we need to see some, increases in prosecutions around this.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. That is why, as a Department of Social Development, we are working together with the Department of Health, because these children we are talking about go to clinics and they are checked at the clinics, antenatal clinics, and therefore the reporting must happen. We are engaging with the Department of Health to say that we know people are talking about constitutional protection and all that, but when you have a law that calls it statutory rape, it means that, one, we must be able to also assist our communities to understand what is statutory rape, because the understanding is that when a child has been taken and slept with by somebody, they claim that it consent. There's no way that a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old can consent to anybody, to any adult, to have sex. That's where we need to start. That's why the Department of Social Development did an outreach program already 2 years before, or even just before COVID. We did an outreach program where we're talking to communities, talking to traditional leaders, engaging in schools, talking to principals, talking to school governing bodies, to say it's their responsibility to talk about these issues and not be afraid to talk about them. Because unfortunately, we have communities where the issue of sex is hidden and not spoken about. Parents don't want to talk about it in their homes. Teachers are also afraid of talking about it. And yet, at the end of the day, go and watch TikTok and go and watch these issues of sex from other sources other than the sources that are supposed to be responsible for it.
Minister, we have to ask, is the talking working? Because how does it end? We don't see the young men responsible for this in that line. We don't hear as much about them dropping out of school. The girls are literally left holding the baby. Doesn't it make you angry that the burden is in the main a girl and potentially her family's problem alone?
Well, it does. Look, I was talking to the young people today and are being very practical to them, saying that when I was 16 and had a child and made misery for my grandparents who were taking me to school, I could make an excuse that I didn't know, which is not the truth, that I didn't know. I was a teenager, but I was already learning that in school. So it is about taking responsibility, particularly the responsibility being taken by parents to talk about this at school. Beyond the parents is about us acting on what happened to the young child who is 10, who is 11. And that's why I said earlier on to you, we are working with the Department of Health and the Department of Education to look for ways and means of prosecuting those men that have made 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds pregnant. Obviously, the responsibility goes beyond the Department of Social Development. The talking needs to happen. The education needs to happen. The education needs to happen even in the schools, but we have to be consistent about it. I think the weakness is we talk about it when there's a height or hype of something. We need to be consistent about it in class. We need to be consistent about it in primary schools, going to high schools. We need to be able to educate not only the children in school, but also our parents, because look, these children are coming from homes. I said this morning to the families and parents that were there, it must start within the family, where the family is able to say there has been a break in the law when somebody makes a 10-year-old, 11-year-old pregnant. And we as a family are going to take action, because these children have the children and they go back to their families. And in many instances, the families are not doing anything about it. And yet it is their responsibility to even report. Who takes the child who is 10, 11 to the clinic? Probably a mother, probably a grandmother, probably an aunt.
Yeah.
Let us start there.
Well, we probably will continue with this conversation next week. We intend to look at this quite scientifically, all of the elements that are responsible for creating an environment in which children are falling pregnant, children's futures are held ransom because either the families won't help or they accept settlement or atonement from, in some cases, the boy's family. So I want to just pause there on this particular subject, Minister, which I hope, again, we can probably talk about next week as we focus on that. But let's go there to one of the issues facing SASSA right now in terms of the payments for grant beneficiaries, and we understand that this hasn't happened because of suspected fraudulent activities. 70,000 beneficiaries not paid their social grants last week. What's the latest on that, especially in terms of verifying data and making sure that the money actually ends up in these in those accounts?
Thank you very much for that question, because when I was in Belfast, day one, when I was visiting the SASSA offices, I did find some women who had come to the SASSA offices to demand to know what has happened to their money. And they were reminded in that office, and I was present there in the process, that way back in October, many beneficiaries were requested to really make sure that their bank accounts are the real bank accounts, because if your bank account related to your name and as well as your ID is not connecting, then we have a problem, because we don't want to be paying people who are not the real beneficiaries. The women that I found there who had come because they want to go and pay school fees and all that, it was explained to them that it had to do with the fact that they changed their bank accounts, and they have the right to do so because people have to look for a bank that's not going to take money away from them. However, they also need to take responsibility and make sure that they change the banking details so that when SASSA automatically pays, because recall, SASSA automatically pays all grants into bank accounts for those who have bank accounts. This is where the hurdle has been. But I'm also saying to SASSA, myself as a minister, let's find better ways of ensuring that people get the information on time. It's easily accessible to them to change the bank details. But also let us use technology today. 350 taught us that it's possible for people to use technology to change the information and get the information to SASSA on time.
All right, so when, Minister, does your technical team estimate this should be resolved?
Well, it should be. Some have been resolved already. Like I said, the women who came to the offices in Belfast. But here's the catch around it, or the problem around it. If you change your bank account and you don't inform SASSA of your banking account, it becomes very difficult for SASSA to do payments in between, when we have to be paying 19 million people, and then you have 70,000 that have not been able to change. Unfortunately for them, they have to wait for the next leg of payments, because the system does not allow SASSA to be paying on the side and not on the dates that have already been agreed upon. Otherwise, it will cause a chaos if we do so. We've explained to them that they will get their money. The problem is that they will not get it on the dates that they thought they were going to get it. But next month, if they have fixed their details with SASSA. They will then get the money that they missed this January. They will also get it then in February, which I know is inconvenience, because many of the women I found there were saying, look, we have to pay for some things like the ECD and so forth, and get the uniforms. It's just unfortunate, but I'm saying to SASSA, can we look into a better system that when people have to then give us the change of their dates, it becomes automatic instead of them having to go to the offices and be standing there sometimes a long time.
Minister, just quickly before we let you go, 70,000 people, as you say, there's a level of accountability that people must bear for not changing those details and letting SASSA know. But given, as you say, that they will probably only get their money in the next payment round, we know that people depend on this. This is a lifeline, especially in a month like January. It couldn't have happened at a worse time possibly. Are you worried about some of the really, real social and other fallout that will happen in those 70,000 households?
Look, fortunately for us, even the women that I found there, they did confess that they were informed about this in October last year. And the issue was, since October last year, why is it that they were not able to then go and make sure that this is done? Because responsibility has to be on our side as government, yes, of paying the grants and paying them on time, but it is the responsibility of beneficiaries to also make sure when information is being sent to them to do the right thing. It's the message that I would like to pass on to our people also, that when you get the information, please act on it, because we are not standing somewhere and paying manually. Everything is being done by processing to the banks, to the post bank or post office and all that. It's my plea to the people of South Africa who are grant beneficiaries. Can they also please take responsibility? And this is very unfortunate. 70,000 is a lot of people. But again, if you look at it against the 19 million and so, it's a smaller number of people. But small is not what we even want. That's what I want as the Minister of Social Development. Okay. I would like people to get their money on time and get their money easier than it has been.
Minister Lindiwe Zulu, thank you very much for talking to us tonight. We appreciate it. The Social Development Minister there, just also sharing her thoughts on the delays in some of these payments. You heard there that if your banking details have changed, you really should go and change them as soon as possible, or alert SASSA as soon as possible about the change, or you risk not getting those payments. We'll keep an eye on this one as well.